The Krell Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems and nobody dared to challenge them. The Krell were giants, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick armor covering their bodies. They had 4 powerful arms, each strong enough to crush steel. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness and their voices rumbled like thunder. Commander Zekthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars. He was the leader of the 7th Conquest Fleet, and he had conquered 15 different species in his lifetime. Some had fought back. Most had simply surrendered when they saw the Krell warships arrive. It made no difference to Zekthor. The result was always the same. The Krell won. They always won. His second officer approached with a data tablet. The officer's name was Vokrun, a younger warrior who still believed that conquest brought honor. Zekthor had stopped believing in honor decades ago. Now he only believed in strength. "Commander, we have received orders from the High Council," Vokrun said. Zekthor took the tablet and read the mission details. A new species had been discovered in a remote arm of the galaxy. They called themselves humans. They lived in a single star system around a yellow sun. Their technology was primitive. They had only recently developed faster than light travel. The High Council wanted them brought into the Dominion as workers. Zekthor studied the images of these humans. They looked weak. They stood only 6 feet tall with soft skin and fragile bodies. They had no natural armor, no claws, no fangs. Their bones looked like they would break easily. Zekthor had seen stronger creatures in the zoos on the Krell homeworld. "How many ships does the Council authorize for this mission?" Zekthor asked. 50 warships, Commander. The Council believes this is more than sufficient." Zekthor almost laughed. 50 warships for this mission was like using a hammer to crush an insect. But orders were orders. He gave the command and the fleet prepared to depart. The journey took 12 days through faster than light travel. When they arrived at the edge of human space, Zekthor ordered his ships to scan the system. The humans had several colonies on different planets and moons. They had mining operations in asteroid fields. They had one main homeworld called Earth. Zekthor decided to start with a small target. There was a mining station near the outer edge of the system. It had only a few hundred humans and minimal defenses. He would make an example of this station. The other humans would see what happened when someone resisted the Krell, and they would surrender quickly. He moved 10 warships toward the mining station. The rest of his fleet waited nearby, ready to strike at other targets if needed. Zekthor opened a communication channel to the station. A human woman appeared on the screen. She looked young, maybe 30 years old in human age. She had short dark hair and steady eyes. "I am Commander Zekthor of the Krell Dominion," he announced. "You are hereby ordered to surrender immediately. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your station. You have 1 hour to comply." The human woman stared at him for a long moment. Zekthor expected her to show fear. Most species did when they first saw a Krell warrior, but this woman just looked tired, like she had been expecting this conversation. "My name is Kate Sullivan," she said. "I'm the commander of this mining station. I've received your message and I have a response for you." Zekthor waited. Perhaps she would beg for more time. Perhaps she would try to negotiate. All species tried these things when they first encountered the Krell. Kate Sullivan leaned forward and her voice was calm and clear. "Come and take it." Then she closed the communication channel. Zekthor stared at the empty screen. In 3,000 years of Krell history, in countless conquests across the galaxy, nobody had ever responded to a Krell ultimatum with those words. It was insane. It was suicidal. The mining station had perhaps 20 humans with weapons. His 10 warships carried 3,000 Krell warriors with advanced armor and guns that could melt through steel. Vokrun looked confused. "Commander, did that human just refuse our demand?" "She did," Zekthor said slowly. "What are your orders?" Zekthor felt a strange sensation in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Curiosity. He had not felt curious about a conquest in many years. Every species followed the same pattern. They either surrendered immediately or fought briefly before being overwhelmed. But this human woman had looked him in the eye and challenged him. "Prepare for assault," Zekthor ordered. "But I want prisoners, especially their commander. I want to understand these humans before we conquer the rest of them." The 10 Krell warships moved into position around the mining station. They were massive vessels, each one 10 times larger than the station itself. their weapons charged with energy that made the space around them glow. Zekthor gave the order to fire a warning shot, a single blast that would destroy one of the station's outer sections. The blast never reached the station. Something small and fast intercepted it, detonating the energy bolt in empty space. Zekthor looked at his sensors. 2 small human ships had launched from the station. They were tiny, barely larger than fighter craft. They looked like toys compared to his warships, but they moved like nothing Zekthor had ever seen. They twisted and turned through space with impossible speed. One of the human ships flew directly toward his warships while the other circled around. Zekthor ordered his gunners to destroy them. The Krell weapons fired, filling space with deadly energy. The human ships dodged. They slipped between the blasts like water flowing through cracks. They were so fast that Krell targeting systems could barely track them. One ship flew so close to a Krell warship that it actually scraped against the hull. Alarms blared as the sensors detected something attached to the ship's armor. What was that? Zekthor demanded. Before anyone could answer, explosions rippled along the warship's side. The human had attached magnetic mines while flying past. The warship's shields flickered and failed. Another human ship fired its weapons at the exposed section, and the Krell warship began venting atmosphere. Zekthor watched in disbelief. One of his warships had just been damaged by a tiny human fighter. It should have been impossible. The human ships had no heavy weapons. They should not have been able to penetrate Krell shields, but they had not tried to penetrate the shields with weapons. They had used speed and cunning instead. They had turned their weakness into an advantage. All ships concentrate fire on those fighters, Zekthor commanded. Deploy boarding pods to the station. We end this now. The battle had begun, and for the first time in his long military career, Commander Zekthor felt something he had not experienced in decades. He felt uncertain about the outcome. The 2 human fighters continued their attack on the Krell warships. Jake Morrison piloted one of them, and he was grinning despite the danger. He had been a pilot for 12 years, flying cargo ships through asteroid fields and dangerous space lanes. He knew how to make a ship dance. "Lisa, I'm going for their communications array," Jake said into his radio. "Cover me." "Copy that," Lisa Chen replied from the other fighter. She was younger than Jake, only 25, but she flew like she had been born in space. Her ship twisted between 2 Krell warships, drawing their fire away from Jake. Jake pushed his fighter to maximum speed. The Krell ships were powerful, but they were slow. They had been designed to fight other large warships, not small fast targets. He flew straight toward the lead Krell vessel, the one that had transmitted the surrender demand. Krell weapons fire filled the space around him. Energy blasts passed so close that his shields sparked and flashed. Jake ignored them. He focused on the large antenna array on top of the Krell ship. That antenna was how they coordinated their fleet. Without it, they would have to use backup systems that were slower and less reliable. He got within range and fired everything his fighter had. The concentrated burst of energy hit the antenna array and melted it into scrap metal. Jake pulled up hard, feeling the gravitational forces push him into his seat. Behind him, the Krell warship went silent on all communication channels. "Target down," Jake reported. "They're blind now," but there was no time to celebrate. 3 Krell boarding pods had launched toward the mining station. Each pod carried 50 Krell warriors in full combat armor. Kate Sullivan and the miners would have to face them alone. Jake turned his fighter toward the station, but he knew he would not arrive in time. Inside the mining station, Kate watched the boarding pods attached to the outer hull with heavy metallic clangs. She turned to the 20 miners gathered in the command center. They were not soldiers. They were engineers, technicians, and workers. But every one of them held a weapon. "Remember the plan," Kate said calmly. "We don't fight fair. We use every advantage we have. This is our station. We know every corridor, every room, every hiding spot. They don't." A miner named Henry Coleman checked his makeshift explosive device. He had built it from mining charges used to break apart asteroids. "They're going to be surprised when they come through that door." "That's the idea," Kate said. The first Krell warriors cut through the station's outer airlock. They entered in formation, their weapons ready, their armor gleaming. The corridor ahead looked empty. The lead warrior signaled for his unit to advance. They made it 5 steps before Henry's trap activated. The explosive charge detonated beneath their feet, tearing through the floor and sending 3 Krell warriors tumbling into the space below. The blast also ruptured a coolant line, spraying super-cold liquid across the corridor. Two more Krell slipped and fell, their armor freezing to the floor. The remaining warriors opened fire blindly, but the humans were already gone. They had retreated through side passages that were too small for the large Krell bodies to follow easily. Kate had planned this carefully. The Krell had strength and armor, but the humans had knowledge and desperation. In another section of the station, Lisa Chen's fighter finally ran out of luck. A Krell weapons blast caught her ship's engine, and it exploded in a ball of fire. Her cockpit separated automatically, the emergency system designed to save the pilot. But she was tumbling through space with no propulsion and no weapons. A Krell warship moved to capture her. Its tractor beam locked onto her cockpit, pulling her toward the ship's hangar bay. Lisa knew what would happen next. They would interrogate her, torture her for information about Earth's defenses, and then kill her or enslave her. She reached for the self-destruct button on her control panel. Every human military vessel had one. The High Command had been very clear in their orders. No human would be taken alive for interrogation if they could help it. The Krell would learn nothing from captured humans, but Lisa hesitated. Through her cockpit window, she could see the mining station. She could see the flashes of weapons fire inside as Kate and the miners fought. If she triggered the self-destruct now, she would die, but the Krell would still be there to finish the battle. An idea formed in her mind. It was crazy and probably would not work, but it was better than giving up. She let the Krell tractor beam pull her into their hangar bay. Krell warriors surrounded her cockpit as it settled on the deck. They approached carefully, their weapons aimed at her. Lisa waited until they were close, until she could see their red eyes through her window. Then she triggered the self-destruct, but she had modified the timer. Instead of exploding immediately, her fighter's reactor would overload in 60 seconds. It was enough time for the Krell to realize something was wrong, but not enough time for them to stop it or evacuate. The explosion tore through the Krell warship's hangar bay and punched into the deck above. The warship lurched to the side, its systems failing. Lisa Chen died in the blast, but she took 200 Krell warriors with her. Jake saw the explosion from his fighter. He knew immediately what Lisa had done. His hands tightened on the controls. The Krell had killed his friend, his wingmate. He wanted revenge, but he was out of ammunition and low on fuel. His fighter could not do any more damage, but he could still help Kate. Jake accelerated toward the mining station and crashed his fighter through one of the damaged sections where the Krell had entered. His ship tore through metal and equipment before sliding to a stop in a large cargo bay. Jake climbed out of the ruined cockpit, grabbed his sidearm, and ran toward the sound of gunfire. He found Kate and 5 miners pinned down in a storage room. 10 Krell warriors were advancing on their position, using their shields and armor to absorb the human weapons fire. The humans were running out of ammunition. Jake saw a stack of oxygen tanks near the Krell warriors. Mining stations always had oxygen tanks everywhere in case of emergency. He aimed carefully and fired at the closest tank. The tank exploded with tremendous force. The compressed oxygen ignited, creating a fireball that engulfed the Krell warriors. Their armor protected them from the flames, but the explosion threw them backward into a wall. While they were recovering, Kate and her team charged forward and finished them at close range. Jake joined Kate behind a barricade. "How many Krell are left on the station?" he asked. "Sensors show about 70 warriors still active," Kate replied. "We've killed maybe 30, but we're running out of people and ammunition. Then we make them chase us to the reactor room," Jake said. "And we blow the whole station." Kate stared at him. "That's a suicide plan. You have a better idea?" She did not. Kate opened the communication channel to all remaining miners. "Everyone fall back to the reactor level. We're going to give the Krell a warm welcome." The surviving humans retreated through the station, making the Krell chase them. The Krell warriors were getting angry now. They had expected an easy victory, but these weak humans had killed dozens of their warriors. The Krell wanted revenge. They followed the humans down to the reactor level, a large chamber filled with the station's power core. Kate and her team waited there with the last of their weapons. The Krell entered cautiously, spreading out to surround the humans. Commander Zekthor watched the battle from his flagship. He had lost 2 warships and hundreds of warriors to a mining station defended by barely 20 humans. It was humiliating. It was impossible. But it was happening. He opened a channel to his boarding teams. "Withdraw immediately. We are going to destroy the station from orbit." But it was too late. Kate Sullivan stood next to the reactor controls and smiled at the Krell warriors surrounding her. "You wanted our station? You can have it." She pressed the emergency shutdown button, but she did not shut the reactor down. She overrode all the safety systems and sent the reactor into overload. The power core began to surge, building toward a massive explosion. The Krell warriors realized what was happening. They turned to run, but the humans opened fire, forcing them to take cover. Precious seconds ticked away. Kate looked at Jake and the other miners. "It's been an honor working with you all." Jake nodded. "See you on the other side." The reactor exploded with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The mining station tore itself apart and everyone inside died instantly. The explosion caught another Krell warship that had been moving in too close, crippling it beyond repair. Commander Zekthor stared at the debris field where the mining station had been. The humans had destroyed themselves rather than surrender. They had taken another of his warships with them. In total, he had lost 4 ships and over 400 warriors trying to capture one small mining station. And he had learned nothing about humanity's defenses. The humans had made sure of that. Zekthor sent an emergency message to the High Council. The message was simple but disturbing. These humans were not like any species the Krell had encountered before. They did not fear death. They did not value their own lives above victory. They fought with cunning and desperation. The High Council sent back orders to wait for reinforcements. Clearly, conquering humanity would require more than 50 warships. But Zekthor felt something he had not experienced in his entire military career. He felt doubt. News of the attack reached Earth within hours. Kate Sullivan's final transmission had been sent to every human colony and outpost in the system. The message included all the combat data from the battle, including detailed scans of Krell ships and weapons. Kate had made sure that her death would not be meaningless. In Geneva, the United Nations Emergency Council gathered in an underground bunker. The room was filled with representatives from every nation on Earth and every human colony in space. The mood was grim. Everyone had seen the footage of the Krell warships. Everyone understood what was coming. Admiral Gregory Harris stood at the front of the room. He was 60 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had commanded Earth's combined fleet for 5 years, and he had never expected to fight an alien invasion. Nobody had. Humans had been exploring space for only 30 years. They had not found any other intelligent life until now. "The situation is simple," Harris said. "We are facing an empire that has conquered 200 star systems. They have technology that is centuries ahead of ours. Their ships are faster, their weapons are stronger, their shields are better. In a direct fight, they will destroy us." A representative from the Mars colony stood up. His name was Peter Walsh, and he looked angry. "Then what do you suggest, Admiral? That we surrender? Let them enslave us?" "I'm suggesting we face reality," Harris replied. "We cannot beat them by playing their game. We need to change the rules." Another representative, Claire Peterson from Earth's European Union, raised her hand. "What do you mean by changing the rules?" Harris activated a holographic display that showed the battle at the mining station. Kate Sullivan and her people held off a Krell force that outnumbered them 20 to 1. They did it by refusing to fight the way the Krell expected. They used traps, ambushes, and suicide attacks. They made the Krell pay for every meter of space. "They all died," someone pointed out. "Yes, they did," Harris agreed. "But they took 4 Krell warships with them. If we can achieve that ratio across the entire war, we might have a chance." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what Harris was suggesting. It was not a plan for victory. It was a plan for survival through maximum violence and minimum morality. They would fight dirty, fight mean, and make the Krell regret ever finding Earth. Claire Peterson stood up. She had been quiet until now, but her voice was strong. "Before we vote on this, I want everyone to hear something." She played an audio recording. It was the last transmission from Jake Morrison before his fighter crashed into the mining station. His words were clear despite the background noise of battle. "Tell them we don't kneel. Tell them humans would rather die free than live as slaves. And tell them we're going to make them pay for every single one of us they kill." The recording ended. Claire looked around the room. That miner, Kate Sullivan, she could have surrendered. She could have saved herself and her people. But she chose to fight. She chose to show the Krell that humans are not easy prey. Now we need to decide if we honor her sacrifice or waste it. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would fight. Admiral Harris immediately began implementing the war plan. It had a simple name: Operation Nightmare. The goal was not to defeat the Krell in battle. The goal was to make every fight so costly, so brutal, so psychologically damaging that the Krell would decide conquering humanity was not worth the price. General Marcus Webb took charge of ground defense. He was a veteran of the Mars Resource Wars, where human factions had fought each other over mining rights and territory. Those wars had been ugly, with no rules and no mercy. Webb knew how to win a fight when you were outgunned and outnumbered. "We're going to turn every colony, every station, every habitat into a death trap," Webb announced to his staff. "The Krell expect conventional warfare. We're going to give them hell." Meanwhile, human engineers worked day and night to develop new weapons. They could not match Krell technology, so they focused on weapons that did not require advanced tech. Nuclear mines disguised as space debris, biological agents designed to attack Krell physiology, nanobots that could eat through Krell armor, computer viruses that could infect Krell systems. Dr. Nina Foster led the Biological Warfare Division. She was a microbiologist who had spent years studying alien bacteria samples from meteorites. Now she was weaponizing everything she knew. "The Krell have a different biochemistry than us," she explained to Harris. "Their immune systems are strong, but they've never encountered Earth diseases. We can create pathogens that are harmless to humans but deadly to Krell." Harris approved every project, no matter how brutal or underhanded. This was not the time for ethics or honor. This was survival. But weapons alone would not win the war. Humanity needed allies. That job fell to Paul Green, a diplomat who had negotiated trade deals with corporations and governments across human space. Now he would try to negotiate with alien species enslaved by the Krell. Paul traveled to a neutral trading station near Krell space. The station was run by the Velden, a species of tall, thin aliens who had been conquered by the Krell 200 years ago. The Velden had accepted their servitude and now worked as merchants and intermediaries. Paul met with a Velden merchant named Salmora in a private room. The Velden looked nervous. Talking to humans was dangerous now. The Krell had made it clear that anyone helping humanity would be punished. "I'm taking a great risk meeting with you," Salmora said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "I know," Paul replied, "and I'm grateful. I need information about the Krell military. I need to know their weaknesses, their supply lines, their communication networks. Why would I help you? The Krell are too powerful. They will crush your resistance," Paul leaned forward. "Maybe they will, but we're going to hurt them badly before we fall. And when we do, every other species in the galaxy is going to see that the Krell can bleed. They can be hurt. They can be fought." Salmora was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want from me?" "Information. Secret support. When the war starts, we need supplies to reach human resistance forces. We need safe harbors where our ships can hide and repair. We need your people to slow down Krell supply convoys, to spread rumors, to create chaos in their logistics. You're asking us to commit suicide. If the Krell discover we're helping you, they will destroy our entire species." "They might," Paul agreed. "But if you don't help us, if humanity falls, you'll lose your best chance at freedom. We're proving that the Krell can be resisted. Help us, and maybe someday you'll be free too." Salmora thought about this. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I will speak to others. We cannot help openly, but perhaps we can arrange for some supply shipments to go missing. Perhaps some intelligence data could be leaked. Small things. Small things can win wars," Paul said. Over the next week, Paul met with representatives from a dozen species. Most were too afraid to help, but a few, like the Velden, agreed to provide secret support. The Tharn, a warrior species that hated serving the Krell, promised to sabotage weapons shipments. The Morphin, a species of engineers, agreed to provide technical data on Krell systems. While Paul worked on building a secret coalition, the Krell were preparing their response. Commander Zekthor's fleet had been reinforced. He now commanded 150 warships, 3 times the size of Earth's entire navy. The High Council had also sent him new orders. The orders were brutal. Humanity had 1 week to surrender unconditionally. If they refused, the Krell would begin destroying human colonies one by one. They would kill millions to make an example. The message to the galaxy would be clear. This is what happens when you resist the Krell dominion. Zekthor transmitted the ultimatum to Earth. He expected the humans to panic and surrender. Every species did when faced with overwhelming force, but he was learning that humans did not behave like other species. Admiral Harris received the Krell ultimatum in his command center. His staff waited nervously for his response. They all knew that refusing meant war, death, and possibly the extinction of humanity. Harris read the ultimatum twice. Then he opened a broadcast channel that would transmit his response across all frequencies, so that every species in the sector could hear. "This is Admiral Gregory Harris of Earth's Combined Fleet, responding to the Krell Dominion. You have given us 1 week to surrender. I have a counteroffer. You have 1 week to leave our space and never return. If you refuse, we will show you what happens when you threaten humanity." His staff stared at him in shock. Harris continued speaking, his voice calm and steady. "You think you can scare us with threats of destruction. You think we'll surrender to save our lives. But you don't understand humans. We've fought each other for thousands of years. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We've faced extinction before and always found a way to survive." Harris paused, letting his words sink in. "You want Earth? Come and take it. But I promise you this. We will make you bleed for every meter of space. We will haunt your dreams and turn your victory into a nightmare. You will learn to fear us before this war is over." He closed the transmission. The command center was silent. One of his officers, a young woman named Kelly Wright, finally spoke. "Sir, do you think they'll actually leave?" Harris shook his head. "No, but I wanted every species in the galaxy to hear that message. I wanted them to know that humans don't beg. We fight." The Krell fleet advanced into human space like a metal storm. Commander Zekthor expected to find human warships waiting to defend their territory. He expected a glorious battle where his superior forces would crush the human resistance. Instead, he found empty space. The human ships were nowhere to be seen. Sensors detected nothing but asteroids, gas clouds, and debris. It made Zekthor uneasy. Where were they hiding? He got his answer an hour later. A Krell cruiser on the edge of his formation suddenly exploded. There had been no warning, no incoming missiles, nothing on sensors. One moment the ship was there, the next it was scattered debris. "What happened?" Zekthor demanded. His sensor officer studied the data. "Commander, it appears the ship struck a mine. But our sensors detected nothing until it exploded. How is that possible? The mine was camouflaged as an asteroid fragment. It was cold, inert, indistinguishable from natural debris until it detonated." Zekthor realized the trap immediately. Space was filled with debris. Asteroids, ice chunks, destroyed satellites, all of it floating through the void. The humans had turned all of it into potential weapons. His fleet would have to scan every piece of debris they encountered, slowing their advance to a crawl. Before he could give new orders, 3 more explosions rippled through his formation. 3 more ships damaged or destroyed by hidden mines. The human strategy was becoming clear. They would not fight directly. They would bleed the Krell fleet slowly, using traps and ambushes. All ships reduce speed and implement full sensor sweeps. Zekthor ordered. We advance carefully, but careful advancement gave the humans more opportunities. A small human strike force appeared from behind a moon, fired missiles at a Krell destroyer, and vanished before the Krell could return fire. The missiles were not advanced, but they were fast and numerous enough to overwhelm the destroyer's shields. Captain Amy Rodriguez commanded the human frigate Defiant. Her ship was tiny compared to Krell warships, but it was fast and hard to detect. She specialized in hit-and-run attacks, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing into the darkness of space. "Target locked," her weapons officer reported. "Krell cruiser, bearing 270. Fire missiles and prepare for immediate jump," Amy ordered. The Defiant launched a spread of nuclear-tipped missiles and jumped away using its faster-than-light drive. The jump lasted only 3 seconds and covered a short distance, but it was enough to escape Krell sensors. By the time the Krell warships turned to engage, the Defiant was already gone. The missiles struck the Krell cruiser's engines, crippling it. The damaged ship could not keep up with the fleet and had to be left behind for repairs. Another Krell vessel removed from the battle without a direct confrontation. Zekthor was furious. This was not warfare. This was cowardice. The humans refused to engage his fleet in honest battle. They struck from hiding and ran away. It was dishonorable, but honor did not matter to the humans. They cared only about survival and killing as many Krell as possible. The Krell fleet reached the first human colony 2 days later. It was a settlement on a moon called New Boston, home to 10,000 humans. Zekthor decided to make an example of this colony. He would show humanity the price of resistance. He sent a landing force of 5,000 warriors to the surface. They would capture the colony, execute the leaders publicly, and enslave the survivors. The message would be broadcast across human space. Submit or face the same fate. The landing craft descended through the moon's thin atmosphere. The colony appeared peaceful from orbit. There were residential domes, industrial facilities, and agricultural zones. Sensors detected no military installations, no defensive weapons. It looked like an easy target. The Krell warriors landed and began their advance. They marched through the colony streets in formation, their armor gleaming, their weapons ready. The human civilians watched them from windows and doorways. The Krell expected fear. They expected people to run and hide. Instead, a human woman walked out of a bakery. She looked old, maybe 60 years in human age. She was carrying a package wrapped in cloth. She walked straight toward the Krell formation. "Stop," the lead Krell warrior commanded. "You are ordered to return to your home immediately." The woman kept walking. She was smiling now, a strange expression that the Krell could not interpret. When she was 10 meters from the warriors, she unwrapped the package. It was an explosive device, crude but powerful. She had built it from commercial materials and packed it with metal fragments. The Krell barely had time to recognize the danger before she triggered it. The explosion killed the woman instantly and took 3 Krell warriors with her. Metal shrapnel wounded a dozen more. The Krell formation scattered, taking cover, searching for more threats. They found them everywhere. The entire colony had become a battlefield. Humans attacked from windows, from rooftops, from underground tunnels. They used homemade bombs, mining equipment, industrial tools, anything that could be turned into a weapon. A school teacher named Susan Park organized a group of teenagers. They had been mapping the colony's underground maintenance tunnels for weeks. Now they used those tunnels to move unseen, attacking Krell patrols and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. A mechanic named Henry Coleman defended a residential section with 20 volunteers. They had rigged the buildings with traps and ambushes. When Krell warriors entered, the buildings collapsed on them. When Krell tried to use their heavy weapons to blast through walls, they triggered explosive charges that Henry had hidden in the foundations. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Krell had superior weapons and armor, but the humans knew every centimeter of their colony. They fought with desperate cunning, sacrificing themselves to take down as many Krell as possible. By the end, the Krell controlled the colony, but they had lost 800 warriors. The humans had lost 3,000 civilians, including women, children, and elderly. They had fought to the last person, refusing to surrender even when defeat was certain. Zekthor watched the battle reports with growing concern. This was supposed to be an easy occupation. Instead, it had become a brutal slaughter, and the message that humanity broadcast to the galaxy was not one of Krell dominance. It was a message of human defiance. The broadcast showed human civilians fighting trained Krell warriors. They showed ordinary people becoming heroes. They showed that humans would rather die than submit. Other species watched these broadcasts and began to wonder. If humans could resist the Krell, maybe they could too. Zekthor tried a different approach. He would bypass the colonies and strike directly at Earth. If he could capture humanity's homeworld, the rest would surrender. He ordered his fleet to advance toward the inner system, but Admiral Harris had been preparing for exactly this move. Earth was the most heavily defended location in human space. Harris had positioned his entire fleet in the region around Saturn, the gas giant with its beautiful rings. The rings provided cover for thousands of hidden weapons platforms, mines, and missile batteries. "The Krell are coming," Harris announced to his crew. "They think they can push through to Earth. We're going to show them they're wrong." The Krell fleet entered Saturn's orbital space with 150 warships. Harris had only 40 ships to oppose them. The numbers were not in humanity's favor, but Harris was not planning to win through superior numbers. "Launch the decoys," he ordered. The 40 human ships that appeared on Krell sensors were actually remotely controlled drones. They looked like real warships on sensors, moved like real warships, and even fired weapons. But they had no crews aboard. Harris had hidden his real fleet deep in Saturn's rings, along with every mine, missile, and weapon platform humanity could build. The Krell took the bait. Zekthor saw the human fleet and ordered a full assault. His warships charged forward, eager to finally engage the human navy in direct combat. They opened fire on the human ships, destroying them one by one. The Krell pushed deep into the Saturn system, chasing the fleeing human vessels. They were focused on the enemy in front of them. They did not notice the trap closing around them until it was too late. Harris watched the Krell fleet move into the kill zone. They were surrounded now with Saturn's rings on all sides. He allowed himself a small smile. All units, weapons free. Light them up. Saturn's rings erupted with fire. Thousands of weapons activated simultaneously. Nuclear missiles launched from hidden platforms. Magnetic accelerators fired chunks of ice and rock at relativistic speeds. Laser batteries carved through Krell shields and armor. The entire region became a storm of death. Krell ships exploded by the dozens. Their shields overloaded. Their armor melted under concentrated fire. Some ships tried to flee, only to hit minefields that tore them apart. Others tried to return fire, but they could not target the weapons hidden in the rings. Zekthor watched in horror as his fleet disintegrated around him. This was not a battle. This was an execution. The humans had planned this perfectly, turned the battlefield itself into a weapon. His flagship shuddered as missiles struck its shields. Alarms blared. Systems failed. Zekthor gave the order to retreat, but many of his ships could not escape. They were trapped in the kill zone, unable to maneuver through the debris and weapons fire. A human fighter appeared on his view screen, accelerating directly toward his flagship. News of the defeat at Saturn spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. The Krell Dominion, which had ruled unchallenged for 3,000 years, had lost half a fleet to a single human ambush. Species across 200 star systems heard the news and began to whisper. If the humans could hurt the Krell, maybe the Krell were not invincible after all. On the Krell homeworld, the High Council met an emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with the most powerful Krell leaders, warriors who had conquered entire civilizations. Now they faced a crisis unlike anything in their history. 80 warships destroyed, one council member said. 8,000 warriors dead. Commander Zekthor himself killed by a single human pilot. This is a disaster. It is worse than a disaster, another replied. Reports are coming in from across the Dominion. The subject species are becoming bold. The Velden have stopped cooperating with supply shipments. The Tharn are sabotaging weapons factories. There have been riots on 3 colony worlds. The council leader, an ancient warrior named Korzath, raised his hand for silence. The question before us is simple. Do we commit more forces to crush humanity, or do we negotiate? Negotiate? Several council members roared the word as an insult. The Krell do not negotiate with inferior species. We conquer or we destroy. Then we may lose the Dominion, Korzath said calmly. If we send more fleets to human space, other sectors will rebel. We do not have enough forces to fight wars on multiple fronts. The humans have shown other species that resistance is possible. The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to destroy Earth entirely, to make an example that would terrify the galaxy into submission. Others argued that such an action would trigger mass rebellion. The Dominion stood at a crossroads. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Harris faced his own difficult decisions. The victory at Saturn had bought humanity time, but it had not won the war. The Krell still had massive fleets and could return with overwhelming force. Worse, Earth's military was exhausted. They had used most of their weapons and missiles in the Saturn ambush. Building more would take months they did not have. Harris called a meeting with his senior staff. General Marcus Webb joined by video link from Mars, where he was coordinating ground defenses. Paul Green attended from the diplomatic station where he had been meeting with alien representatives. We hurt them badly, Harris said, but we can't survive another major battle. We're out of missiles, low on fuel, and our crews are exhausted. If the Krell come back with fresh forces, we'll lose. Then we need to make sure they don't come back, Paul said. I've been talking to the Velden, the Tharn, and others. They're ready to openly rebel if we can guarantee the Krell won't crush them. The Dominion is fracturing, but they need to see that we're still standing. Webb nodded. The problem is perception. Right now, the galaxy sees us as lucky survivors. We need them to see us as victors. We need to look strong even when we're weak. How do we do that? Harris asked. We bluff, Paul replied. We make the Krell think we have more weapons, more ships, more fight left in us than we actually do. We make them believe that attacking Earth again will cost them everything. It was a desperate plan, but Harris had no better options. He authorized Paul to travel to Krell space under a flag of truce. Paul would deliver humanity's terms directly to the High Council. It was incredibly dangerous. The Krell could kill him immediately, but Paul volunteered anyway. Someone has to do this, he said. And I'm the best negotiator we have. Paul traveled to the Krell homeworld aboard a small diplomatic shuttle. When he arrived, Krell warships surrounded him. They could have destroyed his shuttle with a single shot. Instead, they escorted him to the surface, to the council chamber where the Krell leaders waited. The council chamber was enormous, designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. Krell warriors lined the walls, their weapons ready. Paul walked into the center of the room, a single human surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Korzath looked down at Paul from his elevated throne. You are either very brave or very foolish to come here, human. Maybe both, Paul replied. His voice was steady despite his fear. I'm here to deliver humanity's terms for ending this war. Several council members laughed. Your terms? You do not dictate terms to the Krell Dominion. Paul ignored them and addressed Korzath directly. You've lost 80 warships and thousands of warriors fighting us. Your subject species are starting to rebel. You're facing uprisings across your empire. If you continue this war, you'll win eventually, but you'll lose the Dominion in the process. We could destroy Earth from orbit, Korzath said. We could turn your homeworld into ash. You could, Paul agreed. But then you'd face rebellions on every world you control. The galaxy would see that you had to destroy an entire planet just to beat one species. They'd know that you're afraid of us. And fear breeds courage in others. The chamber was silent. Paul continued speaking, knowing this was his only chance. Here are our terms. The Krell will withdraw from human space and recognize our sovereignty. You'll establish a neutral zone between our territories. In exchange, humanity will not actively support rebellions in Krell space. We'll also share our defensive technology with you. Why would you share technology with us? Another council member demanded. Because there are other threats out there in the galaxy, Paul said. Our long-range sensors have detected unknown ships at the edge of explored space. Someday someone else might come looking to conquer. When that happens, it would be better if we weren't destroying each other. Korzath studied Paul for a long moment. The human was clever, offering the Krell a way to end the war without admitting defeat. The Dominion could withdraw from human space while claiming it was a strategic decision to prepare for future threats. And if we refuse your terms? Korzath asked. Paul met his gaze without flinching. Then we'll keep fighting. We'll turn every star system into another Saturn. We'll make you pay for every victory with blood and treasure until there's nothing left of either of us. You feared nothing in this galaxy until you met humans. Now you know we're willing to burn everything down rather than submit. The question is, are you willing to lose your empire just to conquer one species? The council deliberated for 3 days. Paul waited in a guarded room, not knowing if each hour would be his last. Finally, Korzath summoned him back to the chamber. The High Council has decided to accept your terms with one condition. The technology sharing agreement must include a mutual defense pact. If either of our species faces an external threat, we will provide military assistance to each other. Paul had not expected this. The Krell were actually proposing an alliance, even if it was only for defense against outside threats. He nodded slowly. Humanity accepts. We'll draft the formal treaty and meet at a neutral location to sign it. The Treaty of Titan, named after Saturn's largest moon where the Great Battle had been fought, was signed 3 months later. Representatives from humanity, the Krell Dominion, and dozens of other species attended the ceremony. The treaty established peace between humanity and the Krell, and granted independence to several species that had been enslaved. 5 years after the war, Admiral Harris stood on the observation deck of a new space station called New Hope. The station sat on the border between human and Krell space, and served as a center for trade and diplomacy. Through the window, he could see ships from many different species moving peacefully through space. A young officer named Kelly Wright joined him at the window. She had been fresh out of the academy during the war. Now she was a decorated captain who commanded a patrol frigate. Do you think the peace will last, sir? Kelly asked. Harris considered the question carefully. The Krell haven't changed who they are. They still believe in strength and dominance, but now they know that some species will fight back with everything they have. That knowledge changes the equation. So fear keeps the peace? In a way, yes. The Krell fear what we might do if they push us too far. We showed them that we're willing to use any tactic, any weapon, any sacrifice necessary to survive. That's not a lesson they'll forget. Kelly looked out at the peaceful scene. It seems strange that so many died just to teach them that lesson. It is strange, and Harris agreed. Kate Sullivan, Jake Morrison, Lisa Chen, Chris Bennett, and thousands of others. They all died fighting for human freedom. Their sacrifice bought us the right to stand here and watch this peaceful traffic instead of being slaves in a Krell labor camp." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Kelly spoke again. "Sir, I received a report this morning. Long-range sensors detected unknown ships near the edge of explored space. They're not Krell, not human, not any species we know." Harris felt a familiar tension in his chest. "Are they heading this way?" "Not yet. They seem to be observing us from a distance." Harris thought about this. Somewhere out there, another species was watching the galactic community. They were seeing humans, Krell, and other species learning to coexist. They were wondering whether to make contact or stay hidden. "Keep monitoring them," Harris said, "and make sure Earth Command is informed. Whatever comes next, we need to be ready." Kelly saluted and left. Harris remained at the window, looking out at the stars. The war with the Krell had taught humanity a harsh lesson. The galaxy was not empty and it was not safe.